Nico, I'm so very, very happy that you're in my day. You do not know, actually. I've been trying to get you into my calendar for like basically since I met you, right? It's been a long time. It's
It was a,
been maybe a year or two or something like this.
I think it's 2 years ago at
Hmm.
a dinner in Helsinki during Slush that we ended up sitting next to each other.
That's true. And it's practically because of that, because you were one of those people who went out of your way to make a person feel included. I had been going through so many different VC meetings at that point, and for this research project I was working on at the time, looking at how we can better help like VCs and LPs support DI and the ecosystem. And yeah, that was probably one of the first times anybody has actually been so very inclusive or mindful of me and my own little differences. So for me, I don't drink alcohol, and normally, especially in like Finnish activities and events,
Scandinavian. You
they
can say Scandinavian.
it is. It's an assumption. It's absolutely an assumption, right? That you are
Yeah.
going to be like throwing back some booze. And yeah, you were the first person who's like, "Hey, wait, do you drink alcohol?" When they were offering me something, I was like, "No, it's not for me." It's like there must be something, and you actually ask people, "Hey, is there something that she can
I
have that's
mean,
not that?"
to be honest with you, it's just because
Mm.
I thought then I get more for myself. But
The real reason comes out. All
I
right,
mean,
it's passive.
absolutely it is. No, I think it's you're so spot on. Scandinavia as Europe in general, right? But
Mm.
I think very much in Scandinavia. I mean, being from France, I even feel that it's heavy. That drinking culture here in Scandinavia. It's almost
Yeah,
like you can't do business without. If it's outside of the working hours and everything, it's like it's what do you mean you're not drinking? It's weird.
it's
It's
a weird thing.
yeah
And I
for
I
Scandinavia.
noticed that. I definitely noticed that when it came to like doing my interviews and things like this. Anything that was in person, people wanted to drink and such. And that was something where, it just made it slightly awkward all the time. So
Yeah.
thank you for making me not feel awkward, at an event. I really appreciate that.
And you're welcome. I'm happy. I mean, I just think people in general just should think like this.
It's
Not
a
all of us,
thing.
not all of us enjoy a glass of wine or not. I mean, not all of us eat red meat or not, or any kind of meat for that matter, right? I mean, it's just there's space for everyone. Just make sure that people have feel that they're welcome in that space. That's all.
I appreciate that. And I would say, yeah, the VC space is one of those ones where they're trying. There's some messaging around trying to make it a little bit more inclusive and such, and there is some kind of work possibly being done that you see in some companies. I mean, actually, there are lots of different ones, different specialty VCs that are out there right now that are trying to make a difference. But I am impressed that when I see VCs who are actually doing this and kind of living it a bit more, when they're going out of their way, when they're actually doing the work and expanding their networks, when they're actually making an effort to go and talk to different kind of companies, that's something that I always, want to be able to spotlight a bit more. So, thank you for joining. And,
No, I
you
mean,
were,
thank you for having me. I was at first, I'm not gonna lie, I received your message on LinkedIn with 20 other people, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? It's like I always have this bias around if there's too many people, like no. Then I was like, oh, it's Laura, and then I read, I was like, cool, very cool initiative. Let's do it, definitely.
yeah,
Let's chat.
because the thing is, honestly, there's so many different ways to make a change, and I
Yeah,
wanted to kind of bring in different people from different areas to be able to say, hey, look, the reality is, everybody can do something, and it may not be something that you think is like life changing or world changing, but the reality is you could change a day, you could change an experience, and you could change a reality for a person through what you do. And I think sometimes the small actions can lead to different things and bigger things. And for what you do, you are enabling founders to be able to grow their business. You're enabling founders to be able to get funding, to be able to succeed. And you, in that sense, you make dreams happen because you enable more people to be able to access the resources and support to make that happen. So thank you so much. And I kind of wanted to ask some questions about that, if you don't mind.
yay.
Yay. I mean, because I did not know while sitting next to you, but you actually know quite a bit about like company culture, and it's not just something you talk. You really have been doing this for quite some time, right?
Yeah, I think I remember as well when at the dinner we introduced each other to each other, when you and I sitting next to each other, and it was I very much clearly remember that moment. At the time, I was just out of platypus, right? When 2 years ago, I think I was 3 months in the VC world, right? It was still
Yeah.
I was still very new. And I'm sitting next to you, and we're talking about your background, my background, and I say, I was the founder of Platypus, and you actually knew the company. No, but this moment was like, it was one of the most beautiful moments for me. It was like, Platypus? Yeah, you're doing something with culture and everything, and I was so. There's a big part of ego here, but it felt so good about it. It felt so good around like, yes, we're building something cool, and we've been building something cool with culture. Yeah.
And I've definitely been actually talking to people about that company. So Platypus is actually a really good company, because what they do is not just make assumptions about what people think about culture or the different kind of values. As a researcher, one thing I often see a lot of surveys that are used for employee engagement do is they have like all these assumptions about they'll say, what do you think about this? And they assume that people have the same value attached to that same thing. So maybe if they say, they'll use the word belonging, right? A lot of times, right?
Yeah.
And what does it mean? It means 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people, but then when you're in international settings and you're using an English word like this, how it translates is very, very different. So some people think this idea of this concept of belonging, they think about, not just the work belonging to them, but kind of like them belonging to the work. Is it something, that kind of relationship where there's ownership involved,
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily always feel that's a target thing, right? And so they're going to evaluate that. Well, do you feel like you belong? Or do you think that there's high belonging in the company, depending on the survey that you're using? And they'll put something like a middle thing. And for them, that's their target. They don't want to have it to be higher or to be lower. They rank it in a different way, and they value it. They weight it very differently. So I like that you had weighting attached to it, and that you really thought about, what are the different things that matter to different people, and different concepts in different countries and different companies. So
it was very much the concept. I think that the concept, you're spot on. I think I had been frustrated. I mean, I have background in HR, right? And so I've used all those tools, the engagement surveys and so on. I was always very frustrated that I felt the questions were very much guiding me to an answer. I was closed in my answer. The answer needs to be between that scope, right? And I always felt a good example of this is that those surveys, they're going to ask you like, how happy are you with Copenhagen public transport? That's the type of questions you would get in the survey. I'm very happy with Copenhagen public transport. I think it's great. I don't use it. I bike.
Exactly.
So like, I mean, great question. Not relevant to something. To me, I'm not happy with it, but that's not helping me, and that's not helping you help me. You know what I mean? And and so with Platypus, we really thought about like reversing this before asking anything. Let's see what's important to people in the first place. And those things that are important to you, they're not static. People change. Things change in your life, in your personal or professional life. So there will be a change in terms of the things that you care for and that you potentially feel that you belong to or belong less to. I mean, it's just natural, right? But yeah. That was a good journey.
And I appreciate where that journey's taken, not just you, but also it's taken different companies, who use your service. So that was fantastic there. But I love that you were breaking down in some ways what is a company culture, what's a target company culture, And I see so many different founders who are trying to build a culture in their organization. And they focus a lot on this initially. And sometimes they can do this organically, but a lot of times they want to engineer this. They want to think about so we've got these different aspects. We want these things here. We've got these kind of principles, and we've got these words and these phrases and such. And, depending on where they are in the journey, that approach may be more or less effective, From your standpoint, you're working with a lot of founders that are kind of, I think they're seed stage, A rounds. Where are you working?
Pre-seed, seed, and some of them at A round, where we're still on the cap table, and I work with them. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of variation and growth in terms of what that company culture is going to be like between pre-seed and A round, clearly, right? So how do you support them in that growth of culture, in that sense of how they want to
Yeah.
find it? Do you think they're trying to hold on a lot to it, or can they let it grow organically? What's your approach to
I mean, this is such a good question.
it?
So, like for the past 2 years, right? I'm
Hmm.
now on the VC side of things. I'm the partner for what we call internally at Dreamcraft Founder Enablement. Most VCs would call it platform, but I felt that the term platform was not a good description of what we're trying to achieve with that, that part of the business, right? I feel founder enablement is just more clear about the goal we're trying to achieve here, right? And
Yeah.
part of this founder enablement is obviously organizational structure, people and culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I deal with, in the portfolio, it goes from literally two founders to companies that are like, 50 plus people, right? And obviously that means the range on both culture and way to work on this culture is super broad, super broad. We have teams that are very Danish. We have teams that are very international. We have teams that are not based in Denmark. So you have obviously just in essence already a cultural diversity due to the where the people are from or where they're based, right, and where they are in their life and so on. What I try to do, and it's something we do systematically once we invested. So what I try to do is, first of all, we have what we call like a kickoff meeting, where we're going to sit down with the founders and look at where do we need to be in 18 to 24 months time in terms of inflection points, both in product tech, go to market, people and culture. And that's where I start going deeper in terms of like, okay, people and culture, where are we? And you start, with the very kind of like basic but critical organizational structure. How are we structuring ourselves? Who's reporting into who? What are the size of the teams? What framework? And then you start going a little bit more towards culture. What frameworks do we have around communication? What frameworks do we have around decision making? Who can decide what on what without being in the room or not in the room and everything? Those frameworks are the ones that actually start defining what kind of culture you want to have. And I used to go in those discussions with the founder saying, okay, what is your culture? And then you end up with, pardon my French, with some bullshit branding around words that are like just, empathy, get shit done. And you're like, yeah, that's awesome. That's great words. But what's behind the words? Exactly. And I don't believe, that was the whole idea about platypus. I don't believe culture is just words you put on the wall or on a website. Culture is action on a day-to-day basis around things that you believe in, around your values, on what's important to you. So understanding how the founders are building this organization or want to build this organization when they're very early stage around framework of, discussions, decision making, the things that actually shape your culture, for me is more critical than the buzzwords. And then from this, we can actually start to get some words, some values that are actually linked to how they want to build a business, and then potentially as well around the mission and vision about the business, the long term of what they want to achieve, right? For me, that's the culture, or at least the first framework and foundation you want to put on your culture. The thing is, if you do this, but then you don't follow up on creation of habits on those things, then it's just not going to work. I think there's so much parallel. I remember you being a mom, I'm a father. There's so much parallel. Raising a little person is literally the same as trying to raise a culture in an organization. If you just say one time in their life, don't put your foot on the table when you eat, they will put their foot on the table when they eat because you don't create a habit. And it's literally the same about creating a culture. It's creating habits. People are just creating habits, right? And when you say like, oh, people are not fitting, like so many times with founders, when it will happen. We're early stage, people will leave. That's just gonna happen, right? They were not fitting the culture. Okay, cool. Tell me why. If you don't explain why, then you're just using it as a general excuse. And then actually you're probably creating bias and you're probably letting somebody go because they were not, behaving like you wanted to behave. But that's not the same, behaving and creating habits, right? So those meetings are great because it's about, like I said, analyzing, sparring, creating frameworks, creating habits, and then helping them looking at how do I keep on engaging on my culture. I think at least until say B, at least let's say B, say C, or when your company hits 100 people, the founder's job is literally to drive the culture of the organization. And then you start delegating. But like when you're like, when you're 50, at least when you're 50, you should know everyone by their first name. You should be able to engage with those people on maybe not a day-to-day basis, but on a weekly basis. And when some founders are like, oh, but I don't really feel like doing this. Hey, I'm sorry, buddy. That comes with the responsibility of the job. That's just it. There's many things you can delegate, but not everything.
It's actually very interesting because in Finland, we have so many startups that are very tech oriented, where you have people who came from engineering. They may not have actually gotten a lot of background or support or training when it comes to how to support people. And that's a massive thing because you can have such wonderfully brilliant tech folk who understand how to build a product, but not how to build up people, and they don't think about how to support folks, how to communicate very, very well. And these are things that oftentimes I see a lot of the VCs maybe kind of overlook that. The aspect of how well can these people actually work with people in that sense.
I mean,
it's a massive question. It's a massive thing.
It is. It's a massive question. Just the fact that we have one of the founders that's an absolute god when it comes to coding and can build the product, that's amazing. They won't build that product alone. I mean, that's not going to happen. The products that you invest in are getting more and more complex every day, every year, right? So like they won't be alone. And that's why part of our investment process is really I spend 45 minutes with every single founder that comes to IC. And I go very deep into first of all, it's not an interview. They're not looking for a job. I'm not looking to hire them. In a sense, maybe a little bit you could consider an investment, kind of like hiring them, but it's not really the same because it's their business, right? But those 45 minutes, I basically look at four main things. There is what I call the personal ecosystem. Who are they as a person, right? What's their background? Where are they born? Where do they come from? What do their parents do? I really try to understand what's in their core, right? What drives them and why. Then there is what I call the professional ecosystem. And that's, where did they work? What type of organization did they work in? Why did they like this organization versus another one? Their expertise, et cetera, right? Number 3 is very much the founder dynamic. How well do they know each other? How many things they've done together? Is it organic or synthetic, right? Or we met 3 months ago and we're like, let's do a business together. I'm not saying that's wrong, but there will be some things that will make this much tougher than if it's organic. We've known each other for 6 years and everything where there's, everything is based around trust, and trust doesn't build like this. It takes time to trust somebody. And in my view, you need to know them. The last thing I'm very, very keen on, and I discuss with all founders, is stress awareness. What is their own, personal, mental or physical sign that there's a light blinking? Are they aware of it? What framework do they have? And not lying to them saying, oh, they won't be stressed. It will be fucking stressful. Pardon my French again. It will be. You're a founder. That journey is not linear. There's going to be slapped in the face and everything. And if I'm not telling you this, honestly, I'm lying to you. But do you have the self-awareness around when am I stressed or not? Do you have the framework to manage that stress, navigate that stream? Do you have, and that's where I go into personal ecosystem, the right people around you to help you in that journey, right? And so in the professional what you described about, I really try to see okay, have you ever hired people? Have you ever managed people? And if they haven't, I'm not saying that's a direct no, but it's very much the awareness that I will need to help them and support them more than people that might have done some hiring and some recruitment, because we're going to build people. We're going to need to build people around you. And you can be the best tech person in the world if you cannot hire. I don't know about, people say, oh, you need to hire rock stars. That's another subject. I don't believe you need to hire rock stars. But if you cannot hire great people that are very good at working with you, it's going to be a hard journey.
That's true. One thing I want actually to pull out from what you're saying, you're saying a lot of it's built on trust. Okay.
Yes.
And this is the thing that I find to be challenging in the Nordics in particular, because trust is based off, of course, familiarity here. So it's the people that you went to school with, the people that are in
Yes.
that community, people who are very much like you. And how do you get them to expand, their comfort zone in terms of building trust with people who are not exactly like them,
Yeah, so that's top. You're spot on. I mean, this is a country where, I live in Denmark, I live in Finland. People still hang out with the people they went to school with. I'm not even saying university, school. They still hang out with those people 30 years after. And I'm like,
I know.
wow. I mean, most of the people I went to my boarding school with, I don't want to see them. It was... But
they chose the wrong boarding school. I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, but I think the Scandinavian culture is so much based. You're so spot on around my very ethnic, social, economics. We all look the same. We've all grew up in the same area. We all went to the same school and everything. I feel I can trust you because you're literally like me. And then when you bring up this, sadly or not, there's a lot of Scandinavians that are like, oh, but are you saying I'm not open-minded, or I'm not open to diversity? I'm like, no, I'm not saying this. I'm just saying you guys hang out together. I mean, I've been living in Copenhagen for 12 years. One of the recurring subject whenever you talk with expats, or I call myself actually an immigrant. I'm not an expat. I'm an immigrant in this country. Is that it is so hard to build rapport and to build, good, lasting friendship relationship, both to be in a relationship, but even just friendship relationship with Danes. It is so hard. And by this I mean true relationship, because you don't drink, right? But I do, and most Danes, they tell you, oh, but you go to a bodega, you get smashed, you make friends. I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I make friends. I talk with people, but I mean, I don't know them, right? So how do you break that that structural trust, that vision they have around structural trust, right? How do you build a new way around looking at structural trust? I think number one, first of all, there is change in Scandinavia. Over the last 15, 20 years, there's more and more people like you and me that are not born and raised here, that are coming here and living and starting to influence the way they look at culture, right? That's the first thing. I think as well with founders, especially with the young ones, they've traveled, they've worked with foreigners, they used to work with people that are not like them. Now the question is, do they trust? Are they trustful enough to give their trust from the get-go with people they're hiring that are not like them? I want to say sometimes. Very often I see founders that want to hire, in their immediate circle of people I've worked with or people I know and everything. And there's good and bad in doing this. It's safe, but it doesn't challenge you. It doesn't create a room of diversity of thoughts. It's just bringing, it's building a room of yes men or yes women. I don't think that helps you in the long run when you build a startup. But how do we help them do this? We have, I work with somebody, Emil, he was at Diversify. You were at Diversify last year, right? The conference Emil was there. He was a speaker. I just want to find his last name that I absolutely cannot pronounce. So give me a sec.
Thank you for making the effort, by the way. It's an appreciated thing.
Well, his name?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people will just kind of fluff the last name or something like this, or they, will mispronounce it and such, but you're actually making the effort to try to get it right.
I don't, I think again, you react to stuff you've experienced. My name is butchered on a daily basis in Denmark. My name is Blier. And my name is Nicolas, not Nikolai. That's why I just say Nico. It's just easier for everyone,
You introduced yourself to me as Nico, so I feel
Yeah, exactly. I just, because I've learned, just make it easy for people. My name is Nico. It's easy. Now, my name is Nicolas, Michel, Julien, Alain, Blier-Silvestri. If I say this, I don't talk to people anymore. They just run away from the get-go. They're like, this is just too long. Go. Emil Novak Tot is working alongside me at Dreamcrafts. He's just over there.
You were so lucky to get to work with Emil. He's fantastic. He really is.
He's the best. That's why I asked him to come and help me. So he works alongside me a few days per week, and together we try to build frameworks to support the founders, obviously, that everything on structural trust. And for me, that's the base of everything, right? If you don't have the structural trust already between the founders, we had a great session with all the founders of the portfolio during our forum in May. If you don't have this from the get-go between the founders, I see failure. I'm not saying systematically, but I mean, it's just going to be harder than if you trust each other. So Emil helped me with this. And then it's very much, how do we put this in the other layer of the organization? How do we help founders create structural trust with the people that they hire, and they need to start delegating on stuff and everything? It's very difficult, genuinely. I think probably, like you're right, specifically in Scandinavia, that's are probably not the most diverse. They're getting there, but if you compare with France or US or UK, historically there's much less diversity.
Yeah. And that was something where I was looking at how exactly are you going to be able to predict whether or not you're going to grow and such. Then this is a fun thing. So if you look at people who have a very small range of folks that they had in their founding team, even just taking a look at that nationality pool from there, those folks, those teams were less likely to be able to make it to the 5-year mark, right? And that was something where it makes a difference. You weren't thinking about this initially. It becomes much harder to be able to just build this, and that thought process of how to accommodate different kinds of people, how to welcome different kinds of people.
You create cultural depth. You create diversity depth. You don't. You create a room that's not thinking outside of you that's present in the room. I mean, you're spot on.
It makes me think about, like I said, this is a biased sample because these are people who got funding. All right. So this is not to say out of all the founders in general, but these are folks who got funding. And that's a thing where I start to think about, how can we make certain that we're looking at these kind of details as well, from the people who are funding, to consider you have the ability to make that, to open up and extend opportunity, right?
So you said it at the start, right? There's more and more VCs that are specializing in investing in underrepresented ethnic group or social economics and everything, right? And I'll be honest, that's not the case with Dreamcraft. This is not, that's not one of the LP agreements we have with the limited partners. So we do want to do more than what we've been doing in the past, 100%. And I think part of this is the 45-minute meeting I try to have with the every single founder that come to ICS. And it's trying to, I don't know if detect is the right word, but look at where do we see diversity in the people that we're talking with? So, I mean, ethnicity is a pretty simple one. There's gender as well. I'm really getting more and more interested in social economics background. I'm getting more and more interested as well into the second generation immigrants. You're born in Denmark, sure. Your parents are refugees from Yugoslavia. There is all this stuff that I think has a super, super positive impact on people being founders. I read some data that was given to me by another VC that's actually just a specialized VC in diverse founders, but the success rate of founders that are second generation immigrants, people coming from really, really hard social economics, and there was a third case, I think, around not coming from tough social economics and everything, but more of people coming where parents were from academia, but then really needed to prove something or change the world. They were usually the ones with high view on mission, vision, etc., etc. And that's the stuff we're trying now to very much look into around being aware of the responsibilities that are coming with the fact that we can invest in people.
If ever you're interested in any kind of research in that, let me know, because I would love to see more companies looking at socioeconomic inclusion. And that's a thing that I really don't see many companies or many VCs, investors or angels, in fact, even thinking about that kind of thing. So yes, if ever you're looking at that, let me know. But
Yeah, but
honestly,
I'm happy to share data outside of that call.
yeah, I mean, like, if ever, I mean, like, because that's something where I think we could do some collective learning in that sense. Because I know Dreamcraft, you said, is not part of their investment theses in terms of these
No, it's
kind of
not.
things. But I did see that you will have progressive values.
Yeah.
And whenever I think about these kind of things, I always want to think like progressive means you measure and mark progress. I always want to know, like, so what exactly are you considering in terms of being progressive, and how do you
Yeah.
measure that? How do you
So
support that?
there's two angles around that progressive value, right? There is first of all like a thinking of trying to have a positive impact and changing you know the the typical profile of founders we've been investing in the past. If you're being very, very binary, it's like, a white male in their like early 30s that went to a business school or an engineering school, right? And we're not saying we don't want to invest in those people. We want to see that we want to see more than just those people. And that comes, with a sourcing exercise, obviously, of like detecting, engaging and everything. But it comes as well with changing the process of doing the investment, because processes like this, in general, they've been built around that's the type of founder I need to, satisfy in my process. And other founders might not have. And that's why I'm interested in, the social economics and the background. That's why I asked them about like, where they grew up, how they grew up. Like this is important to me because I want to have the best experience for anyone that's going to our IC. I want people that come to our IC, whether they get the investment or not, to come out of it and saying, that was awesome. I've learned something about me. This is going to help me in the next round when I talk with other founders and everything. Thank you, Dreamcraft, whether you gave us cash or not, right? That's one of the impact we can have with being progressive. Then there is obviously marking, and we're part of the diversity commitment where we like report both in terms of the pipeline and the investment we've done in diverse representation. I believe it's on gender and ethnicity. We haven't been good. I mean, I have no shame in saying that we haven't been good over the last. I think we were really shit the first year I joined. We're getting better. Last 12 months have been better, but we're not where we want to be as an organization. And we're trying to tackle this. We're trying, to look at, okay, is it our sourcing? Is it the way we engage? Is it our branding? How do we attract it's a little bit like a recruitment process. How do we attract the right people, the people that, would be like, okay, Dreamcraft might be a right fund for me as a diverse founder. And then how do we detect and engage with those that are like potentially passive, right? There's a lot of work we're doing on the background. And I think that's very much the progressive part around like, we don't want to stay on the statu quo. The statu quo that we have right now, we've had on detecting, engaging, the process and investing, we're not happy. And we want to change this. But it just like, I'm not trying to find for an excuse. It takes time. Those things take a lot of time. But I'm happy where we're going.
I'm very happy that you're putting some effort into these things. One of the things I was looking at, that actually make a massive difference in terms of people that you're going to get into your pipeline, and then also, what you're going to have in terms of who you're actually going to fund. There's like the earn model, making certain that you're building time to educate, to assess what you're doing, to report, and then also to extend your networks, right? So with that, the network side of things, I see you doing a lot of that, by the way. So that's something I think is really encouraging. So going out and, deliberately trying to meet different kinds of founders, deliberately trying to go out and extend your network to people that maybe might not have been folks you would have accessed or would have gotten to bump into otherwise and such. And I appreciate the VCs that really think about that. So, the ones that invited me over to their different events and things like this and such. The reasons why I get to sit next to you at different kinds of different dinners and such. Those are things that it's interesting. So for me, I will sometimes be in a room where I will be maybe the only Black person in the space. That's usually quite common.
That dinner you wear.
And I will be the only Black person there. it'll be something where I will stick out. Yeah, especially here in the Nordics, I would definitely stick out in those spaces. But I do still try to make a point to go, because I realize the people that I know, the people in my network might be different from, the people in yours. The companies that I get to see, the companies and the founders that I get to meet up with, maybe they might not be on your radar. And those are things
Yeah.
where it's always a good thing to just be able to say, well, you know what, I audited this one company actually not that long ago, and they might be somebody that you'd be interested in. Those are things that I want to be able to, extend opportunity as best as I can in that sense.
Yeah.
But then also just to make certain that you get to talk with other people about these kind of topics, because sometimes they don't realize, I'm sure they think about, when they think about their pipeline and people who actually get to sit down and chat with them, think about your hot leads versus the cold leads that you have. And most of these that, from this region, you're going to sit down and talk to people that you have hot leads from, people that you have warm recommendations and referrals from, right? So who's referring, and who do you know, and who are the folks that are actually going to introduce you to people that
You're spot on.
you're going to later extend opportunities to? So you do have to put the effort into getting to know different people and more folks,
Completely. But again, I think that, and I think you and I agree on this, that is not the natural way of things in Scandinavia, where you're more going towards the people you know, the people I went to school with, the university with, my neighbors. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not judging, I'm not saying it's good or bad. That's just what happened historically in the culture of Scandinavia. I do believe that it's changing, but maybe not as fast as we would like on certain things. So what you're saying is so right. Like, extend that network, go and talk with people that are not like you, that don't think like you, because usually good people know good people, and they'll know people in that network that are not like you, that, can be an incremental plus on what you can get access to. Completely.
Yeah. So I think these are always, it's always interesting, because here, that is not just in terms of like the funding side, but also the founder side. They're founding with people who are the folks that they know, right? And as they grow, they're going to come up with certain kind of people challenges that do arise when you start hiring folks who are not with the same background, not with the same experiences, not with the same expectations that you have when it comes to how to collaborate, how to communicate, how to be able to work through stress together, things like this, right? You see all kinds of people problems, and you've worked with different kinds of companies and different scale-ups and growth companies. Are there any problems that you can find in an early stage team that you think are, the red flags, things that are not fixable problems?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
What are those things you're like, that's not a problem, we're not gonna put our money into that one kind of thing? And what are some ones you think that you can fix,
There's a lot of stuff. So first of all, I don't think there's, number one, you can't fix everything, and that's okay, right? Number one. Number two, and it's a little bit like recruitment. It's not an exact science. You will fail, and you need to accept that. Number three, even, trying to go deep in the founder dynamic, like I try to do, trying to understand how long they've known each other, what did they went through, what's their common experience, their trust level, structural trust, and even with all this, and even with talking with each of the founders, trying to understand their personal background, that might give me some indication, understanding of, why and how they think certain ways, etc. This is through my own bias and my own personal experience of the stuff I've been through and that I've experienced, that are like, even giving me a certain angle on things, right? Some of the red flags is, and that's, again, personal point of view, personal opinion, and it's not a truth that's written in stones. Things are different for everyone. But some of the red flags for me personally, not knowing each other for a long time or long enough, from my point of view, not having built that personal relationship, that personal understanding of when you hit the first bump, and you will have an argument, and it will happen. You've never shared an experience of having an argument before. You don't know how the person is arguing. Is it positive conflict, negative conflict? Is the person just going ad hominem and personal attack on something that you disagree on? I like to see, my personal preferences is to see founders that have a common journey to an extent. They've either worked together, they know each other since since childhood or something. And here it's funny because we're going a little bit against what you and I described around creating diversity and everything. But at the same time, that journey, I mean, like that's a marriage we're talking about, that founder's relationship.
I think about this.
Yeah, tell me.
Since you're talking about it, sounds so much like you're talking about relationship coaching at this point. You know,
but it is.
Sounds like, it is. I was thinking like they got married too soon. Basically, they only knew each other and founded a company. You know, like 3 months in, you're like, I don't know. If
it is personal. You know? It is personal relationship management. They're gonna go through so much stress. I draw so much parallel. You draw parallel with stuff that you know and you've experienced yourself in order to understand a situation. I draw so much parallel, genuinely, with the founder journey and becoming a parent. There is so much parallel. Like, hey, society tells you it's fucking amazing, and it is, but society doesn't tell you how hard it is as well. And let's be honest, it is. I mean, when I was a founder, you know, the number of times people were telling me like, "Oh, Nico, but you're free." You're like, yeah, I'm free. I'm free to work all the time and not being able to not think about my business. Yeah,
free to be stressed, free to lose all your hair.
And you know, when you're like, when you tell people around you like we're pregnant, you know, and they're like, "Oh, it's magical, it's great." Yeah, go and tell my wife that was sick every morning for the first like 4 or 5 months. That was not magical. So like, number one, society is not honest about those things. You know? Yeah, exactly. Number two, you know, both the journey, the founder and the parent journey. There's tons of books. There's 50,000 books telling you how to be a parent and how to be a founder. Number three, everyone has an opinion on what you should do, right? So it is a personal relationship and it is a personal journey. So yes, to an extent, what I try to do is assess how strong that relationship is, what they've been through together, the level of structural trust that they have, the way of their communication. Do they have framework again on decision making? How healthy it is. How likely are they to manage well the first storm? Because, and this is, you know, a bit cynical, but like, as a VC, the last thing I want is that founder team to explode. So I'm trying to, you know, assess that risk, and then trying to support and help them as much as possible. So it is, to an extent, a bit of a marriage counseling. I'm not a shrink. I'm not a coach. I've been to a fair amount of things myself with Platypus, you know. So I'm trying to help them with my own personal experience. Have you thought about this? With the clear golden rule from the get-go is that it is your business, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. It's your business. You decide. I'm here to spar. We're here to agree or disagree. Just know that I have your best interest at heart, but you don't have to do what I'm telling you to do. You have to do what you want to do.
Somehow you strike me as a person who would be a very good sparring buddy. Like, you sound like you always have a strong opinion about something, it seems like. So
I have strong opinions about stuff. But hey, I think it's fine to have strong opinions, and I think it's fine to change your opinion as well. It's okay to change your opinion, right? I mean, like,
absolutely.
But that's really the goal, right? So like, red flag number one, like I told you, like lack of common history, of common background, of living through, being through something together. I think that's it's just going to be harder. It doesn't make it. We're not gonna invest, but it's certainly going to make it big question mark, and then we're going to monitor this a lot. That's one thing. Number two, when I talk, you know, with every single founder about like stress management, stress awareness, somebody that tells me, I don't get stress, you know, the alpha male toxic masculinity 101. Ooh. Yeah, this in my little book is like, ding, ding, you're so dead, buddy. You're going to crash and burn. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's physical. The whole stress is not just psychological. It takes a toll on you so much.
It will. It will. And that's okay. It's the only reason it's not okay is if you say, no, I don't experience this. That's bullshit. It is bullshit. And then maybe it's telling me you've never experienced stress before in your life. And then to be honest with you, again, I think that's not a green flag for me. Like in my personal experience of what I've seen us as founders when we had Platypus or other people around me, even before I became a VC, and now being a VC over the last 2 years of working with founders, people that have been kicked, people that have been punched, people that have been through shit in their life will make it better than people that haven't experienced pain. I'm not saying you should experience pain, but grit, going through a wall,
It's a thing. I love that you said that, because I see so many folks who are recruiting, so many people who they'll look for businesses and they'll look for things from very elite networks. And, like I went to Stanford, right? So like I went to schools where you have lots of places and people who are, a lot of them are pretty well off. I'm not gonna lie. The people, they have a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of resources. They come from some really great backgrounds. Not me. I'm from inner city Detroit myself, but there are lots of people who come from really great places there. And when it comes to understanding what it takes to go through hard times, when you mention hard times, just like the weirdest looks on people's faces, like they don't quite
Yeah.
understand those kind of things, right? And it's a very interesting thing, because you're going to have loads of hard times in your business. You're going to have so many different challenges and
Yes.
issues and things that are going to come up. And if you have strategies for being able to cope with that, if you have a network, if you have family, if you have, if you've got some ability and some practice and some experience to be able to say, I can make it through, that's just not off of, some mantra that you read in a yoga,
Yeah.
facility, then I think that that's something you can be able to pull on, and you can be
Yes.
able to do so much better, particularly these days, because, the markets are so unpredictable. Everything is so unpredictable right now. The world is changing in such a way, and there's a lot of, things that you cannot expect. There are a lot of crises and issues and challenges
Yes.
in the economy that's going to affect your business. And if you're not used to working with uncertainty, that's absolutely something that is, a
Completely.
liability. So this is what I'm saying. If you want to look
Completely.
at socioeconomic,
I
aspects
want to
and the
understand
effect of
social
that,
economics. I want to understand what
yeah.
they've experienced in their life and everything, because I
Mhm.
think it's giving me indication of stuff that they might be able to manage. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Mhm.
for red flags is absolute lack of critical thinking and self awareness in a founder.
Mhm.
Um, because that's going to make it very, very difficult for us to work with that person. It's going to make it very, very difficult for any kind of person they hire to work with them.
Mhm.
I think it's probably one of the hardest jobs in the world in a founder, because a founder, you need to be both absolutely certain and uncertain at absolutely all the time. You need to be certain about your mission, vision, and what you want to achieve, with questioning yourself all the time, without at the same time looking like you're weak and everything. You're juggling 50,000 balls at the same time. It's an amazing job, but oh my God, it's hard. And that's the stuff, like critical thinking, self awareness. When I talk with them about stress, like transparency, genuine honesty about, like, if I detect anything that makes me feel this is not there, I'm not saying we're not going to invest, but there will be question marks that we will want to go deeper, like further on in the DD.
I'm actually really curious, because you've been a founder and you've had people ask these questions to you as a person
No, they
who,
did
yeah,
not.
they didn't. Oh,
No,
so this is where you're like,
no,
they could
they did
ask me
not.
this, they wouldn't have given me the money. I don't know. Is that
No, they did not. No, but
how?
like what I was asked was very much about professional background. Like, am I an expert in the field of the stuff I want to build? Obviously, that's super, super, super critical. Like if suddenly I go tomorrow and say, like, I want to build infrastructure for, like, I'm not a tech. People will be like, okay, bullshit. So yes, you check that the person is an expert to an extent, or a certain level of knowledge around the stuff that they want to build. Okay, but I'm surprised. And to be honest with you, still today, like, a lot of the founders I have the discussion with, they tell me, like, wow, you guys go so deep compared to some of the other discussions we have, right? That's the way we want to do things. I'm not saying it's the right way, like, again, like, I think the VC world is super competitive. The founders are very competitive. I don't think there's one way. I think there is the way you feel like you're good at doing, the one that works for you. That works for us. Being, like, personally engaged with the founders works for us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to be honest around the fact that that's not going to work with every founder. And that's okay as well. Some
Absolutely.
founders will not want that level of engagement, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. And it is about understanding the individuals, understanding the kind of company where they are and what they need to be able to flourish and to be able to grow. Um,
Yeah.
I think about, the growth that you've had professionally, like the growth that you've, throughout your career, throughout your journey as a founder, throughout your journey now as a VC. What are some of the lessons that you've picked up along the way that you really, really wish that somebody else in your position, say, will start as like a founder, that you wish that you could pass on to them? And what's a lesson that you wish you could pass on to other VCs?
Wow. Well, I don't want to pass lessons to other VCs because it's a competitive market. So, you know.
But come on now, you're co-investing. You're not. You might lead around and such, but you got to be investing with them. What do you want?
I was being such an evil Frenchman here for a second.
It's okay. I forgive you for
I think for VCs, like my piece of advice is, get out of your comfort zone when you look at founders. Question yourself around question why no? Why is it no? Maybe not on the idea. You know, we look at what? Early stage, pre-seed and seed. We look at idea, markets. Do they have the abilities to do it? And then the founders, right? Question why a no on a founder. Question why a yes on a founder. Why do you keep saying yes on the same type of founders? Look at your portfolio. Is there really just homogeneity around the people that you invest in? Ask yourself why. Right, that would be my first one for the founders. For the VC. For the founders, I want to tell them to be honest, genuinely, this is hard. It's a hard journey. It's an amazing journey, but it's such a hard journey. It's harder than what you think it's going to be, and more people need to be honest with you about this. I think find the levels of well-being around you, being it your family, your partner, your co-founder, people, your VCs, coaches, whatever. Find those levels because they are literally those levels that are the difference between I can make it and continue or I will crash at some point.
That is very, very, very practical and very useful. I think that's something that I wish more people will get to hear. So hopefully they will through this. But I'm actually curious because it may not be that I see you for another, who knows, couple years. Who knows? I probably see you at Slush though, probably.
Yeah, you see me at Slush.
Between now and then, what is something that you're working towards? What are you building towards? What's that beautiful future that you're working towards that I can cheer you on for?
So it's literally it's the stuff that we're going to start, talking more about on the Dreamcraft channel and me on LinkedIn and other stuff. It's very much, founder enablement. That's why we're calling it like this, and all the actions and plans we want to put in place around that concept of founder enablement. I had great VCs on my cap table, right? I really did. What I'm trying to build is the stuff I felt I was missing as a founder, and that is, both in terms of support, strategically, tactically, and on a personal level.
Absolutely. I love that you're solving the problems that you recognize, that that are out there that are impacting businesses, and hopefully making the business world a better place through that and such. So thank you for that. And thank you for putting so much effort into making sure that more people can get opportunities and can be able to see their dreams come true too, hopefully. We'll see.
That's the goal.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thanks for being in my day. Have a great one. And let me know when you're back in town for Slush.
I'll tell you when I land. Yes. And we will not have alcohol. Awesome.
I mean, you can bring whatever you want. If you want to make a mimosa and such, you're welcome to. I will have the orange juice and such. But
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah.
See you soon, Laura.
Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.